Hello everyone, I'm Forrest McFreelava, and this is Mayan Speedplay number 7. We left off at war with the French Empire. Mexico is sending troops across the border right now. Our armies are mobilizing, trying to get into position. We attack the French. We have vast numerical superiority. Their army is much better. Luckily, it looks as though we are pulling through. We do win and stack wipe their force. Our new army is coming up from the south and will hopefully be able to reinforce that siege, get it up to speed, and then just continue pressing through their countryside. We're essentially doing the 16th century version of a blitz right now in an attempt to just seize control over French Mexico and prevent them from getting any landing sites. I say that, but they are landing in the south, so it's kind of a moot point. At any rate, though, the more territory we control, the less areas they'll have to attack us from, the less areas they'll be able to build up, and more importantly, the more information we'll have. As if we control all of the territory being fought over, we'll know exactly where their armies are. Our armies to them will just seem to be more or less in the fog of war, and we'll have just many more strategic options than they will. So we are taking the risk that they may have armies located in their colonial areas in Louisiana right now. Maybe they will, but we have to take that risk, as it is just worth it strategically for us. And we've sieged out most of French Mexico already. We do seize one of their colonies. We'll probably seize the other one as well. This is going to put us in a massive, massive deficit. However, it's worth it. This is probably the farthest we can hope to expand. We have no real way of getting that far other than just with that sort of seizing of colonies. So they're worth it. They will put us in a tremendous deficit. We may have to take loans. However, the British just gifted us 180 ducats, which is of tremendous help. It looks like they are not fans of the French any more than we are, which is just amazingly helpful. Our army in Cusco is coming up. It'll probably not be here for quite some time. We are facing French armies. They've sieged out our capital. They're sieging out our row of forts in the northern portion of our country. Meanwhile, we have to put a new explorer in charge of that army and get them up here as soon as we can. We've finished our sieging out of French Mexico, so we can bring these forces down. We're going to race across their forces and go take back our capital, if at all possible. We also have one of our colonial forces moving up, and hopefully they'll be able to unsiege all of the fortless areas. We are losing control over a large amount of our territory. They are coming to attack those armies, so we are getting them out of there. This is the strategic vision that I'm talking about. Since we see where their armies are, we can just avoid theirs to the best of our ability. Hopefully it's actually going to work, and it looks like it will. We can even go after that one army that's separate from the rest of their forces. And with all that done, we do go ahead and remove some mercenaries, just because we want to cut costs at least a little bit, and we're not really looking for any pitched battles except when we have obvious superiority. So we are splitting those forces up. We are attacking in the south as well. Hopefully that's going to work out. It just doesn't. It looks as though we're also going to lose that battle, which is a little worrying. We're stack wiped there. We weren't in the south, though, which is the more important area. As long as we have armies in each section of our country, we're going to be fine. We pull out of the north as their army is coming to attack us, and we've besieged all of the fortless territories, which is probably the best we can hope for. Our colonies are being finished, which is great. That lowers our deficit considerably, and we have finished our Westernization, which is of the utmost importance. We aren't getting any of the neighbor bonuses to tech just yet for some reason. Hopefully that'll just tick over in the next month. I'm assuming that's what it'll take. At any rate, now that really removes most of the justification the French had for this invasion in the first place, which is pretty good news for us. Hopefully that will also lower their war enthusiasm. It hasn't yet. They're still very interested in fighting us. Ultimately, though, this means that long term we can just tech up, hold our countryside while they hold the cities and fortresses. We're upgrading our armies right now. They're still almost certainly very much ahead of us. Going over to Europe, we see they control half of the Iberian Peninsula. They're still Catholic. It looks like the Reformation hasn't really done too much damage. The Ottomans are being beaten up by a massive Commonwealth, which is just tremendous, and has all of Hungary and Bohemia and just all of that. So that's interesting and will hopefully help hurt the Europeans later on. Austria is in the north, though. The British hate us. Everyone seems to hate us who's at all colonial, and the people who aren't don't like us for any, well, really at all. They don't want to ally us or anything like that. So we're on our own, and we may have to deal with other colonizers. Not exactly great circumstances. The British used to like us at least enough to give us a gift, so who really could say what changed that? Probably just colonial ambitions in our territory. You'll notice our tech is red. They're at tech 15 for military and whatnot. We do hire an advisor. We've finished enough colonies that we're out of our deficit. Alright, so that was quite a bit. Our army is nearly in position. It looks like Portuguese are messing up with their colonies, which is nice for us. And alright, all that said and done, we're going to go ahead and just destroy those French colonies, or probably just occupy them for that slight boost to war score. Hopefully we'll be able to get that before they finish that siege. Luckily we did. And now it's really just a matter of holding what we've got until they get bored and leave, winning the occasional battle, and right now evacuating those forces, as we really don't want to fight any battles we don't have to, as it will just be a terrible slaughter for our troops. And we'll just be going back and forth. As long as we keep their army moving back and forth between these fortresses, just trying to attack our armies, then it doesn't really matter, because they won't be sieging any of our places as long as we have more armies than they do. They can't hold anywhere that doesn't have a fort, as we'll just walk back in and take it back as we just did. And we have 3 armies for the 3 forts. We're going to even roll up and try to destroy that small French force trying to retake French Mexico. We really don't seem to be in a position where we're going to have the forces required, and we just avoid that army as best we can. We don't really seem to have the forces required, or really anything of that sort, to take back our seized fortresses. The French army is just too mobile, too ready to move. We are apparently watching this battle unfold, and it looks as though we see all of Asia now. Ming has exploded, Korea is massive, Japan exists, Ethiopia is doing very well. I would take a look at trade very quickly, and note that we could transfer trade from Africa to the Caribbean if we seize the Caribbean. We could end up with a massive global trading empire in the very late game. That is way too far ahead for us right now, though. The most important thing is that we're just moving our armies away from the French and just kind of going back and forth. It doesn't really look as though there's going to be very much they can do about us or us about them, so I look about making peace. And they want more than I'm willing to give, so we're not even going to really worry about that for now. Eventually, their war enthusiasm is definitely going to drop. After all, they're the French. They have to deal with things in Europe. They have to deal with their budding colonial empire. They can't just be bogged down in Mexico for all of eternity. I just recently finished watching this podcast series about the Haitian Revolution. It's just revolutionspodcast.com, just to plug him. It's a really good podcast series, and the French were completely unable to seize back Haiti once they declared their independence, due in part to things like this. They were able to take the cities, but they didn't have enough troops to actually press forward and make considerable enough gains to get the countryside and then hold down the countryside and actually enforce their will. I say that, however, I managed to just terribly misplace that army because I was distracted in-game as well as in this commentary, and stack wipe that army, which was just terribly bad. We go ahead and raise an additional 6 regiments, as that's what we'll need to retake those forts. Still, that was a terrible, terrible loss. We're down to just 2 armies, and peasant rebels are taking over French Mexico. We do just disband that army in the middle, since it looked like they were just going to come straight for it, and we don't need another battle loss. You see how much that hurt our war score. Luckily, though, they are offering peace deals now, only wanting 1 province, and it's that province we took from them that is still French. So that's tempting. We're not getting a terribly unfair peace deal, but it's also not great, and it looks like that's the only thing that they really, really want. Now, we could do one of 2 things. We could either accept that, lose that 1 province, and kind of cut ourselves off for later expansion, or we could just keep fighting. If they're willing to give in so much, then they're probably going to be willing to give in for a white peace eventually. That's my theory at any rate. We might end up getting into a worse position if we keep losing these battles. We just have to be more on top of it than that. And honestly, I think that's something we can pull off. We just finished that 1st colony, and we're sending a colonist up to the 2nd to get it to our religion and our culture. They are still offering more or less the same deal. We're not going to take it. We're going to stay in this fight until at least we can get a white peace, because I believe we can do it, and I believe we can do it without suffering really any more losses than we already have. Our country is pretty well held together. We do have some rebel factions, but not anything serious. Our armies are still impressive, and now that we've westernized, the ball is really in our court. The longer we're at war, the closer we're going to get to the level that the French are at, and the better we're going to be able to do against them. You'll notice their army is still just going back and forth, and it looks as though they're really trying to control that southern port, which is great. We've just raised a second army in the north, bringing us back up to 3 large armies. We also have that French-Mexican army, which we're just going to use to avoid the French-Mexican peasants. And as long as we can keep this southern army alive, we can keep their large force distracted, and we might even be able to siege back some of our provinces. If we're actually able to do that, then we will have tremendous advantage over them, as their biggest bonus is that they control our provinces, or our fortresses. If we just keep them distracted by this army, we can take those fortresses back, get rid of most of their war score, and then we'll just have really their lowering war enthusiasm just continually working in our favor. They're not ready for a white peace yet, but I'm pretty sure they will be. And their army has been destroyed. We finished the siege of Nicaragua, colonization of Nicaragua, which is great, as they were getting a little worryingly close to that. You'll notice we aren't starting new colonies right now. I don't want them to just rush in and seize any new colonies that we would make, as that'd be very counterproductive in the long run. I'd be more willing to just not colonize for a few years than to actually deal with what that would entail. At any rate, though, we are just kind of holding out for the moment. We are luckily still distracting their forces. We've finished unsieging one of our provinces. We're going to gather up all of our forces in the region and try to destroy that French force in admittedly very favorable terrain for themselves. We will leave 1 unit back so that we don't lose our progress on the siege, and begin the attack with our 2-star general, and we are just hemorrhaging morale to an extent that is terribly worrying. Our forces are just not staying in the field very much. We pull everyone, even that final force, and we're going to try as hard as we can to win this battle, because it will determine really the course of this war, whether or not we can hopefully make a white peace or we have to fight on. And we stack wipe them, we've won the battle. We can go on to that next fortress, hopefully keep distracting that French army, although they are wheeling back now. And it looks as though they would accept a white peace. It would take a less than 20 war score to get all of French Mexico, although that might be unrealistic if we can't actually win any battles, and they control our capital as well as some other key provinces. So it might not be terribly realistic for us to pull that diplomatic coup off. Although we can almost certainly we can hold the line. That's the main thing. They'll probably start offering us white pieces right now, and with that, we've really won. This war wasn't so much a war to see if we could take French Mexico. It was a war to see if we have the right to survive as a state. And since we've held our own and we've westernized, we've proven that. We have proven that we have the right to exist. What we're going to do now is go rush up with that army and just burn down all the French colonies we can. Not just to be vindictive, although that is somewhat what it is. Mainly, though, just to set the French colonists back a little bit. They have large numbers of armies in our territory, so who knows if they'd be able to start seizing our countryside. That's not important. They're willing to white peace, or at least they're, willing to white peace. So we can probably just do some damage, get our forces away from those French peasant rebels, because they're probably very superior to our armies, burn down those colonies, load up all of our forces up here so we can colonize up north into those Indian tribes, and make peace with the French. So just like that, we've proven our right to exist. We can try to cut them off colonially. It looks like the Protestant Reformation isn't doing too much. Nothing's really happening in the empire, and it is nowhere near coming together, which is a little unfortunate. Not really surprising with the massive Commonwealth breathing down their throats. Or down there. Yeah, I'm not really sure how that metaphor ends. The French like us more, though, now. So did the British. And that is great news. The Castilians as well, Aragon. It looks as though we have proven our right to exist to the European nations and to the world at large. Thank you very much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll be back soon with